Liv Morgan wants to be seen as the mastermind behind Finn Bálor's downfall. But if that's true, then Dominik Mysterio may have been the one who paid the price for it. Because Liv Morgan can't really have both versions of this story. She can't claim she orchestrated Finn's removal and then turn around and say they only moved because Finn attacked Dom first. Those are two completely different stories, and people are already noticing. The biggest problem with Liv Morgan right now isn't that she's wrong. It's that her story keeps changing depending on which version of events make her look best. Because not too long ago, Liv was being framed as someone who had this all figured out. Not emotionally, not in the moment, strategically. Like she had already seen the board, already made the move, already knew where this was headed. That's what made the mastermind framing work. It wasn't just, I'm upset with Finn. It was, I planned for this. I was ahead of him. I was always going to get rid of him. That version of Liv is calculating. That version is dangerous. But here's the problem. Now she's saying Finn turned his back on the Judgment Day first. That Finn attacked Dom. That they just did what they had to do in response. But you can't really have both. If you plan this over a year in advance, it shouldn't feel reactive. It should feel like an execution. If it was a master plan, you pulled the trigger. If Finn forced your hand, you were reacting. Because right now, Liv is trying to claim credit for the outcome while dodging responsibility for the cost. And the cost matters because Dom didn't just lose a random match in the middle of all of this. He lost the Intercontinental Championship while the group was actively fracturing around him. So if Liv wants credit for orchestrating Finn's removal, she also has to own what that timing cost Dom. Either she knew this would happen and let it happen anyway, or she didn't actually have control like she claimed. One makes her look selfish, the other makes her look performative, and there's no clean answer to that. And here's where it gets really interesting. Because whether people want to admit it or not, Dominik Mysterio is no longer being positioned like a side character. He is the gravitational center of this group. Finn's fallout runs through Dom. Liv's credibility runs through Dom. The emotional temperature of the entire faction keeps circling back to Dom. And once a faction starts orbiting one person, that person quietly determines the future of everyone else in it. Which means Liv isn't just trying to stay relevant, he's trying to stay necessary. And those are not the same thing. Because the second Dom no longer needs Liv to validate his place in the story, every contradiction she's made gets harder to hide. Every narrative pivot gets messier. And every decision she made starts being judged by one question. Did this actually help Dom? Or did it just help Liv? Right now, that answer is getting hard to defend. And here's the detail I can't stop thinking about. Because Liv may not just be changing her story for the general audience. She may be changing it for Roxanne Perez, too. And that matters because Roxanne, whatever her complicated place in all of this is, has never felt indifferent to what happens to Dom. So if Liv walks into that dynamic and leads with, yes, I planned Finn's removal, yes, I saw it coming, yes, I made the call, then the very next question becomes, so you knew Dom was going to lose the Intercontinental Championship in the middle of all that, and you let it happen anyway? There's no clean answer to that. But if the story becomes, Finn turned on us, Finn attacked us first, we just responded, then suddenly Liv isn't the one who cost Dom anything. Finn is. And that version is a lot easier to sell to someone who actually cares about what happens to Dominik Mysterio. Which means Liv's changing story may not just be for damage control. It might be targeted damage control. And if that's the direction the WWE is leaning into, that makes Roxanne way more important than she looks. And that's what makes Roxanne so dangerous in this story. Not because she's not the leader, but because she introduces something Liv clearly does not fully control. Uncertainty. Liv works best when she can define the story. When she can frame what happened, when she can decide who's loyal, when she can shape who the villain is. But Roxanne doesn't sit cleanly inside that structure. She feels volatile, she feels opportunistic, She feels like someone who could stay aligned with Dom, while becoming a completely unpredictable problem for Liv. And the WWE rarely tells these faction stories in a straight line. They don't always go betrayal, clean split, and it's done. They let instability sit. They let people coexist in tension. They let things get weird before they finally break. Roxanne is perfect for that because she doesn't have to overthrow Liv to become a problem for her. She just has to keep existing in a way Liv can't fully predict. And if Roxanne ever starts realizing that Liv isn't telling the full truth, just a version of the story that keeps her protected, then the dynamic changes immediately. Because now Liv isn't just navigating a wild card, she's navigating someone who may eventually realize she's being managed. And that's when a wild card starts being useful and starts becoming dangerous. Because if Dom is the center and Roxanne is increasingly orbiting Dom, then Liv isn't managing stability. She's managing a countdown. And that's really what all this comes down to. The interesting question isn't, is Liv Morgan still in control? It's what happens when Liv realizing this may not be her story anymore. Because the first sign a character is losing control isn't when they get attacked. It's not when they get betrayed. It's when they can no longer tell a clean story about what they themselves have done. And right now, that's exactly where Liv is. If she's the mastermind, Dom may have paid for it. If she isn't, then maybe she was never controlling this as much as she wanted everyone to believe. Either way, that's not stable leadership. That's a character standing in the middle of a faction that's quietly evolving around someone else. And if the WWE keeps following that thread, Dominik Mysterio may no longer be a part of Liv's power. He may be becoming his own. And once that happens, the Judgment Day doesn't just become unstable, it becomes unpredictable. And honestly, that's when this story gets really good. If you like this breakdown, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And if you really want to support the channel directly, links for Buy Me a Coffee, Throne, and channel memberships are in the description. I'll see you on the next one.